friends, thank you for watching this video. I am Mohamad, and today we're gonna be exploring how we can add JWT token into our application. We're gonna basically add token-based authentication. We're gonna create the register mechanism. We're gonna basically create the login mechanism as well. We're gonna be adding some authentication to our controllers. So not anyone will be able to call our controllers. So the user will need to first register, then they need to have their tokens, and then they need to send their tokens into the action itself, so it will be able to authenticate them and basically get the result that they want. So this is going to be a very exciting video, so please grab your coffee and let's get started. We're going to start by mapping first the authentication approach that we're going to be building. We're going to go through the flow of our authentication, from sending the username and a password to what the API will do and what the API going to respond back. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to be utilizing similar to last time, which is going to be the swim lane journey. And basically we're going to start mapping the request from the front end all the way to the API and then all the way back. So in essence, what we need to do here is, in the front end, the user will have to start their journey, which is this nice green circle. So let's make it green. And basically once the user start their journey, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be actually filling their username and a password. So here they're going to input, let's say, email and password. And let's make this a bit smaller. Okay. So once they input their email and a password, the next step is basically what we need to do is we need to send this request to the backend. And basically here we're gonna say this is the backend. Oh yeah, the backend. And basically we don't need this. Oops. We don't need this. We don't need this. So the first thing, or the first request that the backend is gonna do, is basically validate the format of the request. That's the first thing. So basically once we send that request to the backend is gonna receive it, say thank you very much for sending it to me. Now it needs to validate. So basically it's gonna check if the email is in the right format. It contained, for example, at something, it has the right, basically the right email format. And once it's validated, the first step which it's gonna be doing is it's gonna check if that email exists. So what we can do is, let's add this one here as well, and we can say this one from the database. So we can say here, and let's remove this for now. We can just take this one, let's see. We can copy this and we can put this here, and we can say check if email exists. That's going to be the first step. And basically how does it check if the email exists or not? So in essence it has to go to the database. So let's get this decision, and here it's gonna look up the email. So basically the backend, it's gonna send the request to the database telling it, listen to me, do you have this email available? And the database is gonna respond. So let's make this a bit bigger so we can see what's gonna happen. See, okay, and if we move this a bit here, I think, yeah. So once we have asked the database to check, the database can return two things. So the first thing that's gonna be returning to us is, let's make this smaller, email doesn't exist. As simple as that. So that's the first option that the database can return to us. So if the email doesn't exist, which means that we have to return that to the user, we're gonna return an answer as invalid credentials. We should not tell them exactly what went wrong. We need to make it as generic as possible. So we use invalid credentials, and once we invalid the credentials, we're gonna basically end the journey there. So we'll make this as red, and we'll end the journey. The journey has finished. So that's the first approach. So in essence, what we did is we inputted the email and a password. It went to the backend, it validated the request. Then the first check that it did, it needed to check if the email exists. Then the backend sent the request to the database to check. The database told us here the email doesn't exist. We return the message to the front end saying invalid credential, and we stop. So the second one is the email actually does exist. So that's the next second step. The email actually exists, which is really good for us because we can now continue in the journey. So now that the email actually exists, the next step that we're going to be doing is we need to validate if that email and password combinations are enough for us to actually grant that user access. So let's see what's going to happen here. So let's try to make this a bit more big so we can actually continue working with it inside. Okay. So the next step for us, I'm just looking to make sure that everything is still in frame. So let's put this here. So once the email exists, the next step is we need to validate the password, the email password combination. So that's the next step. So how do we validate that? It's gonna be also through the database. Let's make this a bit bigger. Let's put this here, and then we're gonna send another request to the database to check if our validation is valid. We're gonna say here validate combination. And again, the database is gonna return to us two types of answers. So the first one, it's gonna be invalid combination. And basically, if we have an invalid combination, we're gonna return the same thing again to the users. And basically, once we return this to the users, we'll be able to actually tell them that there's an invalid credentials. We should not tell them that there's a mismatch between the username and a password, because we should not give specific details. It's all for security purposes, so we need to try to make it as broad as possible. So that's why we specify invalid credentials. So once we have done that, the next step for us is we're gonna see what is the happy path. So in case there is a valid combination, so from here the request is gonna come, and let's make this a bit bigger. Okay, so now we have a valid credentials. Once we have a valid credentials, the next step for us is we need to actually create a token for the user, because basically what we need to do is we need to return to the user that token that they're going to be actually utilizing in order for them to do any subsequent requests. So in case they want to, for example, view their account, get any types of information, they need to attach that token to the header of the request. So once we have this valid credentials, the next step is to create a token based on the credentials. And once they have created a token based on that credentials, what we need to do is we need to basically return to the user. We can return here access granted. And basically, once we return access granted, what we need to do is we need to end the first journey, which is the login journey. And this we need to be green because basically the journey has completed successfully. So in essence, this is the flow that we want to start to build, for example, for today. We're going to first start within the front end, which is going to be either Swagger or any types of API communication application. And basically like Insomnia or Postman. So it doesn't really matter the front end. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to input a username, an email and a password. We're going to send it to the backend. The backend is going to validate that this is an email. And then once it's validated, let's add another condition here. So what we can do is, let's make it like this. See, it's always better to go and refine your journey because you're gonna be needing a couple of iterations before you make sure that it's the final one. So let's take this one here. Let's paste this here. And basically, let's connect this one to this one. And let's connect this one here. So that's the happy path. So the email actually exists and we are able to actually validate it. So if in case it wasn't validated, so let's put this connected to this one. So we'll have more space. Okay. I'm not sure why it's being directly linked to the line. Let's try to zoom in a bit. Okay, now we can see that we have different options. Okay, let's make this a bit lower. Okay, sounds good. So now what we can do, because this is in case it's a valid credential, so we're gonna say valid. And in case of it's an invalid credentials, we need to stop. So we'll put this here. We'll move this a bit forward. And basically here what we need to do, in case it's an invalid credentials, we just need to stop the request. And basically from here we're gonna stop the journey. And we're gonna see here invalid credentials, invalid. Basically, let's update this. So first of all, we're gonna check if it's a valid email or not. So if it's a valid, we'll continue. If it's invalid, we'll send invalid credentials and we'll stop. If it's valid, we're gonna check the email. So here we say email doesn't exist. We're gonna say false because it doesn't exist. And here, we're gonna say true because it exists. So in case it doesn't, we return again invalid credential and we'll stop. In case we continue to exist email functionality to check, now we're gonna have to validate the email and a password combination. Once we validate that combination that inside that database, if it's a valid combination, which is gonna be true, this is false, sorry, it's an invalid combination, we're gonna return invalid credentials and we're gonna stop. If it's a valid combination, we're gonna return true. And basically once it's a valid credentials, we're gonna create the token, then we're gonna return it back to the user. So that's gonna be the steps. Perfect. So now what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna go through our terminal. We're gonna be basically creating the application, and then we're gonna be actually starting adding everything inside our application so we can have this flow implemented. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're gonna be doing is we need to go to GitHub, which is my GitHub account. So GitHub Mohamad Lawand. Let's go to my GitHub account. If you're not following me there, please follow me. That will be really good. Oh, I got a new achievement. That's good. I didn't know that I had this achievement. So, okay, let's zoom in a bit. So if you're not following me again on GitHub, please follow me. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna go to the repositories And basically we're gonna utilizing the .NET CRUD repository which we have built in the last video. So if you don't know how did we do it, how did we build it, I'm gonna be linking the video here somewhere where you can actually click on and see how the full process of how did we do and build the CRUD, and hopefully that will be able to help you. So once you find this net6-CRUD, let's click on it, and we need to go to the master branch. And once we come to here, we're gonna just come to code and we're gonna copy this one. So now we have to go to our terminal, and inside our terminal, let's navigate to where we wanna have the application. I'm gonna have it inside my work in progress folder. I'm gonna create a new folder. I'm gonna call it Authentication. I'm gonna go to this folder, and basically I'm gonna clone the application here. So git the clone. Perfect. And now the application is cloned. What I can do is I can just open it. So I'm going to be utilizing, there's multiple IDEs you can utilize here. So for example, you can have Visual Studio Code, and basically Visual Studio Code is a free tool which you can actually utilize to basically create any .NET basically any application that you want in any different language. You can utilize the Visual Studio, which is a really good tool. You can have Visual Studio for Mac, because I'm on the Mac, which is also a very powerful tool. I think it's still in preview, so it's not this one. That's the wrong link. It's gonna be this one. Yes. So that's also a very good tool you can actually download, and basically you can start using for free on the Mac. And basically the one that I'm currently gonna be using is Rider. So basically let's open it up. And in essence, Rider is a very strong IDE specifically for .NET on a Mac. It has a lot of great potentials, has full support for .NET 6, and it's a very fast IDE. So it's a paid one, but you can get it for like 30 days for free. But again, you don't really have to utilize Rider. You can either use Visual Studio or you can use Visual Studio Code, and basically you can take it from there. Because I already have a license, that's why I'm going to be utilizing it. So now let's open Rider. So now that I have Rider open, I'm just gonna click on open here. I'm gonna go to my desktop, work in progress, authentication, CRUD.NET 6, and I can see the application that I have checked out. I'm gonna click on the Formula 1 app SLN, and I'm gonna click open. Yes, open and trust. Let's put this here. And basically right now we can see that my application is loading, and basically I can see everything that we have built before. Again, if you did not see that video, I highly recommend going through it, because we go into details how we can create this, how we can connect it to a database, how did we build the Teams controller, so on and so forth, how we migrated it from an in-memory database to an actually fully-fledged database. So once you have done all of that, the next step for us is we're gonna start actually first by building and adding some Nuget packages. And once we add these Nuget packages, we're gonna start actually building our authentication mechanism. So the first thing, as we said, is we need to add some packages. So we have multiple ways of adding packages. So if you're utilizing Rider, you can just right click on this, on the application name, you can click on manage Nuget package. And once you get to the Nuget package, you can input the package name that you want to install. So for example, the first one, it's gonna be the Microsoft .asp net core .authentication .jwt bearer, this one, the first one. So once we choose which Nuget package we want, we can just click on it and click on the plus button, and we can click on install, and we can see it has been installed successfully. So that's one way of doing it. The next step is let's do it through the terminal, because if you're utilizing Visual Studio Code, you can actually do it directly through the terminal. So let's navigate to the application here, and we can see I'm inside the application. Even if I do .NET build, it will build. Perfect. So the next way we can actually add another Nuget package is by utilizing the command line, and basically we're gonna put .NET add package Microsoft.asp net core identity entity framework core, and let's see. Now we can see it's being installed, and you can see it has installed successfully. So if I want to double check all of the Nuget package that I have, I can just right click on this, I can click on edit, and then we can see here edit CS profile, and I can see here the two libraries that I have installed, which is great. We still have one that I want to add, which is basically, let's do that through the command line as well. So it's going to be .NET add package Microsoft.asp net core identity UI, and that should be it. Okay, great. Now I have installed all of these, and if I come here I can see that all of these has been installed. The next step is basically I need to update my app settings.json in order for me to have the secret key. And you might think to yourself, okay, what is the secret key and why do I need it? And for that, let's go back to our web browser. So in essence, let's go to one of the best browsers for JWT, which is JWT.io. So we already have covered this previously, but if you are new to this, let us understand what's happening here. So basically this is a JSON Web Token, and a JSON Web Token is basically formed is a string, basically in essence, and it's comprised of three different sections. So the first part is going to be the header, which contain the algorithm type, and basically it says that it's going to be an JWT token string. The second one is the payload, which is the data that we are passing additionally inside the header, inside the request, sorry. And lastly, it's going to be the signature. And the way this is built is basically all of these are encrypted values. So although here we can see that I have a name which is a generic one, and I have some kind of a random ID which is generated, but in essence, or the payload information that I'm passing, which contain the keys in order for the server to decrypt and validate that this is a valid token that the system has generated and it's not any random JWT, we're going to have some kind of authentication, as we can see here. And this authentication in essence is being utilized in order for us to validate the authenticity of the JWT token, that we are in fact the system which generated it. It wasn't any other random system. We need to validate that the value inside of it are actually encrypted in the right way, and we are able to decrypt them, so on and so forth. So that's why we need to have an encryption key inside in order for us, whenever we generate this token and we send it to the user, and once the user send it back, we need to be able to decrypt that token and then basically see the information and validate it. So that's why we need a key. So now let's go back to Rider, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to go to app settings, and inside the app settings here we're going to add a new section, and this section we're going to call it JWT config, as simple as that. And then what we're going to be doing here is we're going to basically, this is going to be the secret that we're going to be utilizing in order for us to encrypt and decrypt the JWT token key that we have. So once we have it here, what we need to do is we need to have a random string which is generated. We can put, for example, my name, but this is not really good as a secret. The secret needs to be long and complicated. So if we go back to our web browser, and we can just go to Google, and we can say here, let's zoom in a bit, generate random string online, anything. Okay, let's see this one, random string generator, only necessary, and basically I want it to be 25 characters. Let me zoom in, and basically it should Okay, each string should be 10 characters long. Okay, let's make this 25. Here I only want one. And numeric, uppercase and lowercase, yes, why not? I think that should be it. And if I click on get strings, oh, what did I do wrong? Okay, let's put 20 then. And this is a sample string that has been generated for me. So let me copy this, go back to Rider, put that random string here, and I click again. I got another one, so let's copy them and let's use them both as a secret. So for example here, this could be my secret that I'm using to encrypt and decrypt my tokens. And this is for development purposes, it's fine for us to put the secret inside the app settings, but once that application is being put on any QA environment, UAT environment, prod environment, that should not be here. Or basically that should not be committed into our Git repository whatsoever. What we need to do is we need to put it somewhere safe, which could be like a application key vault on Azure, which basically that will allow us to communicate with the key vault to get those keys. So we should never ever put the keys directly into our Git repo or on our application, because basically it's not valid. It makes our application very vulnerable. So that's why we should not put them there. But for development purposes and to make this video a bit simpler and not 6 hours long, we're gonna utilize it directly now from the app settings. So once we have done that, the next step that we need to do is inside our models, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna create a new, actually outside the models here, I'm gonna create a new directory, which is a new folder, and I'm just gonna call it configurations. And basically inside this configurations folder here, I'm gonna add a new class, and this class I'm gonna call it JWT config, and basically add. And basically this class here that I have is basically the same thing as this class. So in order for me to directly connect from the app settings and be able to put this information out in my application, I'm just giving it the same name. And as you guessed it, we're gonna have a string here which is named secret. Simple as that. So once I have done that and basically I have created this, the next step for me is basically injecting this inside my Program.cs. So let's go to our Program.cs, and now what I'm gonna be doing is basically utilizing this, the builder configuration, in order for me to get my keys there. So we're gonna add this after we do the DB connection, so let's do it here. And basically we're gonna put builder dot services, and we're gonna say that actually, yeah, the services dot configure, and here we're gonna configure our JWT config, and basically we're gonna direct it to find it inside our configuration. So we're gonna put basically builder dot configuration dot get section, and then here we're gonna specify the same section, which is gonna be JWT config. So that will make it easy for us, because basically what we're doing is we are configuring the service. So whenever we want to inject the JWT config, it's gonna check here our app settings to find this function JWT config. Is gonna fill the secret inside that class, and basically we'll be able to access this directly. So once we have done that, the next step for us is we're gonna actually now start building our JWT authentication service. So let's start with this. Okay, just an extra point before we move on to creating our JWT service. This section here will allow us to utilize our configuration within the DI container, and basically that's within our dependency injection container. I just wanted to mention this one here because you might think to yourself, why are we doing it like this? It just will help us within the DI container. So now that we have discussed this, now let's start building our JWT service. So the first thing is we're going to utilizing the builder. We're going to connect to the services, and then we're going to say we want to add authentication. And you can see here, because we have added all of those Nuget packages, all of this will come up to, all of this will be available for us directly. So add authentication, and basically we're gonna provide options, and we're gonna be building the authentication options. And here we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna close this. Perfect. So now we are added the authentication. Basically what we're doing is we are updating our middleware in order for the middleware to understand there's going to be authentication. So that way, whenever a request comes in with a header which contains authentication, it will know that this is a secure request and it needs to go through the authentication process in order for it to validate the token which is coming in, which is really important for us to do. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to put options dot, we're going to say default authentication scheme, and it's going to be JWT bearer defaults dot authentication scheme. So basically here what we're saying is the default authentication mechanism that we're utilizing within our application right now is the JWT bearer default scheme. And we can see here that it says bearer on it. So when we are building the header, we can see in the header we're sending the authorization key, and the value is going to be bearer on the token, and we're going to see this in more detail, but it's very important for us to put this from now. The next step is we're going to put options. If I can write options dot default scheme, and it's going to be basically the same thing, JWT bearer defaults dot authentication scheme, same thing. Second, we're going to put options dot default challenges scheme equal JWT bearer defaults dot authentication scheme. So all of these schemes, so for example, if we hover on this, and we can see it's used for the async authentication challenge. So whenever we want to challenge that scheme, so for example, we want to validate it, we need to utilize, we're telling it that it needs to be challenging it through the JWT bearer. The default authentication is basically the fallback. So in case the main one did not work, it's going to be falling back on this. It's all part of building our authentication mechanism. So once we have done that, the next step for us is, let's make this a bit smaller so we have a bit more space. What we're going to be doing is we're going to add the bearer configuration. So before the semicolon and after this brackets here has closed, we're going to just put a new line, and we're going to put dot add JWT bearer. And basically once we have added that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be updating the configuration for it. So what we can do is we can just put JWT, and basically we're utilizing a lambda function for us to build this configuration for the bearer. So let's put them all the way here. And basically the first thing we're going to be doing is, because all of the JWT bearer tokens that we're going to be having is going to be based on the secret key that we have in order for us to actually create them and basically validate them. So these two are going to be working together. So what are we going to be doing here? What we're doing is basically we're telling our application, our middleware, that for all of the authentication mechanism that we have for encrypting and decrypting that keys, we need to actually know, we need to get the keys from the app settings in order for us to utilize it. So that's what we're doing. So we're going to say var key equal encoding dot ASCII dot get bytes. And basically we're gonna go to builder.configuration, and then basically we need to connect with the JWT config. Oh sorry, I forgot one thing, which is gonna be, actually let's do it like this. Yeah, configuration dot get section, the key, and then dot value, and that's it. So that's one way we can do it, where basically what we're doing is, actually let's do it, forgot the secret. So in essence what we're doing is I'll explain this right now, but first of here, we're connecting to our configuration, we're getting the key JWT config with the secret, and we have the value here. And then once we get the actual string of this, we are converting it to a array of bytes, because that we're going to be utilizing for our encryption and decryption. We cannot use it as a string. It's better for us to utilize as an array of bytes. So once I get the strings from the app settings, we are converting it to an array of bytes. So once we have done that, we just got it here, we did not inject it yet, so that's going to be next. So first of all, we're going to say JWT.save token is going to equal to true. And basically, if we take a look at what save token does, it's basically it allows us to store the token inside our header for the authentication properties. So that's why we need to actually keep it there. So basically, we are saying that once the authentication has been successful, we are keeping the header inside that request. So we need to keep this. The next step is now we need to start to build our JWT.token validation parameters. And these basically validation parameters which can allow us to verify that the token that we are receiving is a token that we have generated through our application, and it's not any random token that someone found on the internet and using in order for them to get access to our application. So equal new token validation parameters, and let's build it from here. So the first item that we want to validate inside our parameter is we need to basically validate the signing key, the issuer signing key. And basically what this means, this means that we are using for every single token that we are receiving, we are checking the credentials or the key that is being used for us to sign it or encrypt it and decrypt it. So that's why it's really important for us to do that. So the second one that we need to validate is issuer signing key. So the first one, we're going to say true as well. The issuer signing key here, we are providing the key that needs to match whatever our token is being sent, whatever exists inside our token. So the issuer signing key, it's going to be basically new symmetric security key, and we're going to pass the key. So the first one, we are saying that for every token that we are receiving, we need to check the key that exists within it in order for us to make sure that this is a valid key. And basically, how do we do that? We're basically passing the key that we have got from here, and we're telling it you're going to use the key that we currently have, and you're going to compare it to the key that the token is sending, and you're going to do the encryption and decryption of these keys to make sure that they are equal. And basically, if they are valid and they are equal, we can actually continue with that request. If not, we need to stop because this is an invalid key. So that's why this is really important for us to keep here. So once we have done that, the next step is we need to validate issuer. It's going to be validate issuer, and for now I'm just gonna put false. And why, you might think to yourself, okay, why are you putting it false? Because it's really, if it's really important for development purposes, and again I'm really emphasizing on that, sometimes from the local machine this creates an issue because the HTTPS SSL credentials that is being generated when we run the application locally on our machines can get invalidated, and that can cause an issue. But for now, we're just going to make it false. But again, once you go to prod, you need to switch it through, or you go to any actual deployment. But for now, I'm going to say here for dev. The second one is going to be, let's add a comma. After we validate the issuer, we need to validate the audience. I'm also going to say false. Again, it's only for development purposes. I'm saying false. And then we're going to say require expiration time. Again, false. And you might think to yourself, why? So basically, JWT tokens are short-lived tokens, and basically they only live for 30 seconds, and then they die, and then basically we need to get new ones, or basically get invalidated. They live for another 30 seconds, or no matter how long. Or no matter how long we actually give them their lifetime or their lifespan, they can live for that time, and then they are not usable anymore. For development purposes, I'm not gonna be actually generating multiple ones one after another if we are testing. In real world scenario, there is something called a refresh token, which is another token that you send with the main token in order for the authentication mechanism be able to switch those tokens on the fly. That's gonna be a separate video from this after this video. So the first one, we're just gonna implement normal authentication. The second one is we're gonna implement refresh tokens, how we can actually refresh these tokens within our requests. And for the sake of, again, just simplicity for this video, just we can see how we can create these tokens. I'm not adding time expiration, but again, this needs to be happening and once we go to production. So for this one, I'm just gonna say for dev as well. And basically, we're gonna say needs to be updated when refresh token is added. Okay. So now that we have covered this, and the last one is we're gonna say validate lifetime. I'm gonna say false, actually true, because we need to make sure that the lifetime of it is value. And we can see here, what does this mean? So if you hover on top of it, we can see that the validate lifetime is basically validating the lifetime of the token that we're sending. So let's say the token that we are generating, we're telling it that it lives for a minute. So it will be able to calculate for how long that token is has been created. So if it's less than a minute, it will still be a valid token that we can use. If it's longer than a minute, it will not be valid and it will be rejected. So that's why we need it here. And all of that, so this is basically gonna be the main items that we're utilizing in order for us to have that, to add JWT token to our authentication and basically defining the authentication mechanism that we want. But we are not done yet. There's a lot of stuff still that we need to add. So the next step is basically we're gonna be actually, I'll check if we have already add authorization, which is fine. But we also, what we need to do is we need to do app.use authentication. And basically what this is doing is here we have defined inside our middleware that we're utilizing authentication. We're adding authentication to our middleware, and we're defining all of these different options. And basically here what we're doing is we are actually using the authentication inside the middleware. So this two-step, one is adding it and the other one is basically utilizing it. So once we have added the authentication, now let us just do a quick build to make sure that everything is still running as it should be. So let's run the application. We can see the application is running, and let's open this inside my browser. So I don't want to use it in Safari, I want to use it in Edge. So let's put it here. And let's zoom in. And now, right now, let me close this. Right now, I don't have anything extra. All I have is my normal application. And basically, if I click on add teams here, get teams, I should be able to see all of the teams that exist inside my database. And currently there's none, which should be fine. If I click, for example, post, let me try adding a team. I'm gonna give it an ID 1. I'm gonna give it the name, I don't know, Mercedes, AMG F1. The country is gonna be United Kingdom. And the team principal is Toto Wolff. If I click on execute, what did I get? I got the 201, which has been added. So now if I click on get everything, I got my Mercedes team back, which is perfect. So now our API is working, and basically everything that I have added did not affect it yet, which is great. The next step is basically we're gonna be actually going back to our source code. So let's go back to our application. And you might think to yourself, okay, that's great. Now I have everything stored in my application, the configuration for my authentication. But where will I be actually adding my username and a password? Where are all of this information being stored? Where I can see my credentials, where I can see all of the users that I have. And currently, if we open our database, and let's connect to it. if I open here my database, in my tables, I can see that I have only a teams table that belong to me. These are defaults, one for SQLite and this one for the migrations that we have added last time. If you don't really know, I really suggest you go watch that video, because it will really give you a help on the migrations. But right now we can see that I only have one teams. I don't have any word which says that username, password, or all of that data that I need. So what can we do? Because we are utilizing .NET, there's a lot of features and a lot of stuff that .NET provides us, which is we really take for granted. And one of these main features is basically identity. And basically identity is a way that we can actually directly create those tables to manage, which is going to contain our credentials, username and a password, roles, different access that we can give. All of that can be provided for us directly out of the box. And identity will take care of this, managing those tables, so on and so forth. So how can we add this and how we can utilize it? So first of all, we have already added the necessary Nuget package. The second way that we're going to be doing is, because we are communicating with the database, what we need to do is we need to update our DB context. And basically right here, what we're doing is we are just inheriting the normal DB context that exists within entity framework. So the steps that we need to do in order for us to update this, it's going to be very simple. So instead of utilizing the normal DB context, we're going to be utilizing the identity DB context. And basically the identity DB context that we need to add this, we need to add those references. And basically, in essence, the identity DB context, if we hover on top of it, so let's see. It's basically a basic class where we can actually have all of the identity information available for us. I know that will not give a lot of help, but in essence, all of the tables that we're going to be needing for the identity, so it's like the users tables, the role, where we link users with role and all of that, the claims, all of those will be provided for us for free without us doing any work from the identity framework. And this can elevate a lot of the work for us. So instead of creating those models here, creating those tables, doing all of this connection together, we are all inheriting them from the identity, and basically we will be able to see them in our database by simply just utilizing identity DB context instead of utilizing DB context. So once we have added all of this, I've basically just updated a single line, to be honest, a single word. What we're going to be doing is similar to what we have done last time, is we're going to be opening our terminal, and basically we're going to do migrations, because basically this is going to be a database change, and the way we're going to be reflecting those changes to our database, we need to create a new migration and basically update those migrations to the database. So let's do this right now. So we're going to put .NET migrations, and we're just going to say adding identity data to API. And right now, okay, I forgot to put EF. See, it's still early morning. And now this should work. So basically I'm saying .NET entity framework, migrations, and then I'm adding it. So now we can see that it has passed successfully. And if I open my migration folders, I can see here that I have a new migration file. If I open this migration file, I can see that I have a roles table being added. I did not add this, it's all came from the identity. I have ASP.NET users was being added. I have ASP.NET role claims. I have user claims, ASP.NET user claims. I have all of these tables available for me out of the box. I can even have ASP.NET user logins. User tokens. All of this information is available for me out of the box without me having to do any single thing. And here you can see the power of Microsoft Identity, because basically it took a lot of the heavy lifting that I need to do in order for me to create all of this. So basically with any migration, the first step is actually creating the migration. The second step is actually implementing it into the database. So we're going to put .NET EF database update. We're basically updating the database with those changes. And now we can see that changes has been implemented successfully. So if I click on table and I refresh it, I should see all of my tables being added, and I can see here that I have ASP.NET role claims being added, ASP.NET roles. I can see my users table, my users token, every single thing has been added automatically for me in my database, where I can manage all of my users. I did not have to do anything. All I did is basically add this identity in front of the DB context. So instead of utilizing only DB context, I just used identity DB context, and all of this has been generated for me, which is really cool. Okay, great. So once we have done that, the next step is basically we're going to be doing is, once I send a request to my API, I need to receive a response. So basically that response, it's going to be if in case the authentication is successful, I need to get my token, I need to get if it's a pass or fail, like if the request has been success or not, and then I need to get for example, if there is any errors or the timestamp of my request, any information that I need. So to make it easy for us, I'm gonna be creating a model inside our application. So inside the models folder, we're gonna be creating a new, let's create a new class, and we're gonna call it auth result. Basically, it's the authentication results that we're gonna be needing, and all I'm doing right now here is just put a string, which is gonna be of type token. And in essence, what we're also gonna be doing is, let's add, if this is boolean, we're gonna say result. So if it's success or not, and should we add a list of errors? Why not? So property, let's make it as a list of strings. We're just gonna call it errors. That should be fine. So once we have those, the next step is we're gonna be actually creating the model that we're gonna be receiving. So let's do this right now. So that's the authentication result. But what about the DTO, or basically the request body that we're going to be able to receive in order for us to do the authentication or the registration? So basically, first of all, we need to register the user before we can actually authenticate them. And when the user register, we need to add their name, their email, and the password that they're going to be sending. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be building our DTO for the request body, which is going to be receiving. And DTO is data transfer object. It's basically the body of the request that we are expecting. So inside our models here, let me make a new folder just to make it easy. I'm going to call it DTOs. And basically inside my DTOs, I'm going to be adding a new class. And this class, I'm going to be calling it user registration request DTO. And basically, what am I expecting from the user? Basically, I'm expecting a string as their name. I'm expecting a string as their email. And I'm expecting a string as their password. And because I want to add some rules, so all of these will need to be required. So that way, in case any of the requests coming in without any of these, the request will not going to be accepted. So I'm going to be required, and this one as well is going to be required. Okay, great. So now that I have built this, what I'm going to be doing right now is I'm going to start building my authentication controller. So right here inside my controllers folder, all I have is themes, and this, let's delete it. We don't really need this. Delete. All I have is my themes controllers. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to click on add controller, and I'm going to call this authentication controller. Authentication controller. So now that my controller is I have it here, basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm gonna see what do I have here for a configuration. So the first thing is I have a controller base instead of controller, and we already covered this What we're utilizing a controller base. So we're gonna put controller base, because basically we're not, as a short review, we're not utilizing the views. So controller base will give us all of the functionality of a controller without the ability to render any views, and that's the exact thing that we wanted, and we don't really want this because we are not processing any views. The second thing that we need to do is we need to specify a route. So it's gonna be, first just put route, and then we need to specify the path for this route, and we're gonna say it's an API / 2 brackets, and we're gonna say controller. So whatever the name of the controller is gonna be automatically injected, and we're gonna say this is gonna be an API controller, and that should be a good first initialization of our controllers. So right now, if I look at our Teams one, we can see it has the same thing. We have the route, we have an API controller, and we have here the controller base. Perfect. So this one here, so out of just we can clarify, it's gonna be this route, API / authentication. Perfect. So the next step that we need to do is basically what we need to utilize, because we're utilizing identity for us to manage the users, we're gonna have to utilize some of the identity component that is already provided for us out of the box in order for us to create the users, build the, add them to our database, so on and so forth. So let's do this here. So the first thing that we're gonna be doing is we're gonna basically make a private read only. We're gonna utilize the user manager, and the user manager is provided for us by the identity Nuget package that we have installed out of the box for free. User manager, and then here I'm just gonna put identity user, and then basically we're gonna put here user manager. And the reason I'm doing this is basically I'm tapping to my DI container, or basically dependency injection container, to get the instance of the user manager. So if we remember inside my inside my program.cs, I have automatically here built the authentication mechanism, and basically I'm telling the DI that I need to use authentication, I'm utilizing bearer, so on and so forth. And basically, because I'm already injecting here my DB contacts, and my DB contacts now utilize the identity DB contacts, all of this information will be injected there. And basically here I'm using the authentication so that will be allow me to actually utilize the user manager for identity user to create it. So you might think to yourself, okay, hold on a second, I don't know what the identity user is. So in essence, identity user is the default user that we have in order for us to interact with identity. So if we open here the ASP.NET user table that has been created for us, we can see that all of this information exists out of the box. And basically this is a representation of an identity user class. In essence, whenever we want to create, for example, a new table, we need to create a class, and then we map it to a DB set. Similarly with an authentication, we do the same thing. And this is automatically provided for us, so we don't have to worry about it. So once we have added this, the next step is we're just gonna be passing the JWT config, because we're gonna be using it in order for us to authenticate and the request, and basically to make sure that the key is encrypted in the correct way and decrypted in the correct way. So we're gonna put private read only JWT config, and we're just gonna say JWT config, because we have already added all of this inside our program.cs. So let me just open it again, and we have automatically added to our dependency injection here. Where is it here? We have automatically added to our DI container. We will be able to utilize it anywhere we want inside our controls or inside our application in general. So once we have done that, now what we need to do is we need to create a constructor, and basically we need to inject these inside our constructor. So let's copy this first, and basically it's going to be user manager, and let's copy this one, and it's going to be JWT config and equal underscore user manager equal user manager, and underscore JWT config equal JWT config. Perfect. Once we have done that, now we're going to start building our register action. So it's very exciting. So let's do this right now. Let's make this smaller because we don't really need it, just taking a lot of space. And basically our action for the registration, because we are sending it to the controller and we're requesting stuff, it needs to be post. So we're going to say HTTP post, and then basically we need to specify the route for it. We're going to say register because we're going to have multiple posts requests, one for login, one for registration. And basically we need to make it a public async task, let's say I action result, and we're gonna call it register. And basically what we need to do is we're gonna make it get the body from the from body, and it's gonna be equal to the user registration request DTO, user registration request DTO, and we're just gonna call it request DTO. Very simple. Let's close this so we'll have more space. So here we can see, let me make this a bit higher so everyone, it will be very easy for us to follow. Okay, so now what we did is basically we created an action, we made it as a post, we gave it the route, we're telling it that it needs to read from the body of the request and it needs to map to the user registration DTO that we have created here, and basically we're giving it the name request DTO. Very straightforward, and basically should be easy so far to follow. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we need to validate the incoming request. So validate the incoming request. So if we take a look back into our diagram that we did at the first journey, which is once we, this is for the authentication, we needed to add another one for the registration, which is, I skipped my mind, apologies for that. But basically what we need to do is we need to actually validate the requests similarly to this. So let's do this right now. We're gonna put here if, what is it called, model state, oops, model state dot is valid. So in essence, this is considered as the model that's being received. So we're saying if it's valid and it is basically complying with all of these required conditions that we had, we are able to process this request. So in case it's valid, we'll continue, else, without the else, we can say return bad request, because basically this is an invalid request because this is not valid. So once we have done this, the first thing that we need to do is we need to check if this is if the email already exists. Email already exists. Let's update this swim lane here. So let's do this right now like this. Let's copy this and let's drag them down all the way down. Okay. So this one here is gonna be for the registration. So we can just consistent. So for the registration. So what we're gonna be doing first is, we're getting the input, we're validating it if it's correct or not. So if it's not valid, we're sending an invalid credentials or bad request. We're checking if the email exists. So far everything is the same. So if the email doesn't exist, the difference here is gonna start from here. So in case this one is true, so the email exists, we cannot register it again. So we need to say that email exists. And we're gonna say this, please log in, instead of registering, because basically the email is already exist. If it's false, what we need to do is we need to add the users. Basically we're gonna say email doesn't exist. What we're gonna be doing is we need to validate, actually we need to add the email, password, and the name. And once we actually add them, we need to send them the database. So we're gonna check if they have been saved correctly. So if it's not saved correctly, we're gonna say it's gonna have an error happened, so error generated. And we're gonna say bad request because something went wrong. So if it's not saved correctly, if it is saved correctly, we're gonna basically have generate credentials for them. And basically what we're gonna be doing is create a token based on these credentials, and then we're gonna give them first access so they can able to log in. So that's the original journey that we're gonna take for the registration. So first they're gonna provide us with a name, email, and a password. That's gonna be the first thing. We're gonna validate them. If not valid, we're gonna stop. If it's valid, we're gonna check if the email exists. So if the email exists, we're gonna stop and ask the user to log in. If it doesn't exist, we're gonna add the email and the name and the password. We're gonna save them in the database. If they're not saved correctly, we're gonna send a bad request. If it's or not a bad request, we're gonna send a server error. In case it's saved correctly, we're gonna generate those credentials, generate the token, and send them back. Perfect. So just now we are aware of what's going on. So right now we are on this phase, which is basically we need to check. So let's make all of these green as soon as, not a green, blue. So make sure that we have covered all of these steps. So, oops, we have checked the inputs. We basically did all of these checks. Now we're checking if the email exists or not. So let's see how we can do that. We're gonna put var user underscore exist. So we're gonna actually be utilizing the user manager. So we're gonna say await underscore user manager that we currently have dot find by email async, and we're just gonna pass the email, which is gonna be from the request DTO.email. So this again, user manager is this library is provided for us directly from ASP.NET, and this library will provide us with all of this functionality out of the box. So this one here, we're gonna be utilizing to do the lookup. So it's gonna be basically if user exists is not equal null, we are able to continue. Actually, let's do it the other way. If it is equal to null, if it is not equal to null, what we need to do is we need to send a bad request. So we're gonna say return bad request, and then say we need to pass new, what was the body of the response, auth result. Yeah, let's pass an auth result to it. And basically within that auth result, we're gonna say the result was false because it has failed. And basically the errors we can say equal new list, and basically inside this list we're gonna have a message, and we're gonna say that inside this message that email already exists. That's all what we're gonna be doing in case the user already exists. So we can see here that in case the email exists, which is we have done right now, we send a email already exists process. So now we need to continue in case the email does not exist, and basically we need to add this new user to our application. So what's the next step? Let's make this a bit taller. Okay. So the next step is we need to start creating a user. And we're gonna be utilizing the identity for this. So it's gonna be a var new underscore user equal await. Actually, it's gonna equal new identity user, because basically we're utilizing the default services that the identity framework give us. So we're having an identity user, and we're gonna fill the information for this identity user. So this identity user is expecting an email, so we're gonna put request DTO.email. It's expecting a name, username, or let's put the username similar to the name. So we're just gonna put request DTO.email. I think that should be fine for now, just to create a user. So an email and username should be the same. And now once we have created an object, we need to create this object. So basically once we have initialized an object, which is of type identity user, we need to tell the entity framework that it needs to create it inside our database. So we're gonna say var is created equal await underscore user manager dot create async, and we're going to be passing the new user that we have. And the way we add it as well, we need to add the password for it. So we're going to put request DTO dot password. So let's hover here over the create user and see what this gives us. So let's hover more on top so you can see it. Okay, so if we hover here, we can see that basically it creates the specified user with a given password. So that's what we wanted. So we wanted to create the user with a specific password inside our table. So once we add this, the next step, we need to check if it has been created successfully. So we're going to say if is created dot succeeded. So that's what we want to see, if it has been succeeded. What we need to do is generate tokens. But if it's not succeeded, we need to return an error. So we can say return bad request. What can we say? We can just say new auth result. And basically, let's put this here. We can say that the errors equal new lists, and basically we can add the error that we want. We can say server error. There's different ways. This is just one way we can do it. And let's make the request result equal false, so it didn't pass. And now what we need to do is we need to actually do the work in order for us to actually create the token. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a new method, and this method is going to be, this method is going to be responsible for creating the JWT token. So let's see how we can create this method. So first of all, we're going to make it private. We're going to make it return a string, and we're going to call it generate JWT token. And all it's going to take is an identity user. And we're going to call it user. Actually, user. And basically, we're going to be utilizing this method here to generate the token and return it. So this should be very interesting and very nice to build. So the first thing that we're going to be doing here is we need to create a token handler. And basically, that token handler is going to be responsible for actually generating our token. So let's get started. So it's going to be var JWT token handler equal new JWT security token handler, and we need to add the reference. Oh, we have two of these. Okay, great. And once we have added the token handler, the next step is we need to get the security key that we have. So var key equal encoding .utf8 dot get bytes, and then we're going to be utilizing whatever we have injected in the startup class, which is going to be the underscore JWT config. So let's use this underscore JWT config dot secret, and now this will give us the key in the array bytes that we need. So the next step after this is what we need to do is we need to create a token descriptor. And in essence, a token descriptor is we're going to allow us to put all of the configuration that we need to put inside a token. So if we go to our web browser, and if we go to our JWT.io website, let's refresh this, we can see here that a token is formed of different types of data. So we have 3 parts, as we said, and every single part of this contains multiple types of data. So this is the header, this is the payload data, and basically this is a signature. So within a token descriptor, it will allow us to input all of this information there. So that's what we're going to be adding right now. So first things first, it's going to be var token descriptor equal new security token descriptor. Let's add a semicolon at the end so we don't forget. And the first thing that we're going to be adding is basically the subject. And the subject here is going to be basically new claims identity. and basically the claims identity is gonna be new array of claims. Let's make it a new array, and we'll populate it like this. I think that should be fine. Let's see, let's add, for example, one item which could be new claim, and inside this new claim, for example, let's give it an ID, and this ID we can make it the user.id. Okay, so let us understand what's happening here. So as we said, the token descriptor, in essence, it's gonna be all of this information that we have here. We want to start inputting it. And if we take a look at the payload data that we have here, so one of them is the IAT, the sub, and the name. So all of this is basically, they are claims, and the claims, in essence, they are like key value pair that we have. And these key value pairs that we have will allow us to basically have a key, which is basically in this case an ID or a name, and we can put a value to it. And that's what basically a claim is. And basically these claims or key value pair, we attach them to our JWT request in order for us to have payload data. So in essence, what we did here is basically we created a new security decryptor. For the subject, we have basically created a claims identity, which is going to be like a list of claims for the identity. And in essence, what we did here, we started adding one claim after another. So as we can see here, we have the first claim. The first claim is this one. So let's try to add another claim. So we can, for example, add a new claim, and we can do JWT register claims name. And we can use, for example, the sub, and the sub is going to be user.email. And if we go back to our web browser, we can see here that we have a sub, and here it's a token. I'm going to put the sub as an email. So another one I can do is, for example, new claim, and it could be JWT registered claim names. And for example, instead of the sub, I can put email, which we have. I'm gonna put also value, and we're gonna put user.email. And what I can do as well is right now I wanna add this IAT, which is gonna be a unique ID that I have, that's gonna be specific for this token and specific for this user as well. So specific for the user and for the token. So let's do this. What we can do, actually, new claim. Just gonna put JWT registered claim names .iat. Actually, let's put the JIT first, GTI, and it's gonna be new. Actually, it's gonna be GUID .new GUID, and basically we can transform this to string, and we can add it here. Now let's add the IAT. So we can see here the IAT, it could be a Unix time frame. So let's add this. So new claim JWT register claim names .iat, and we can put the value here is date time .now .unix to the universal time over to, let's see, is there a Unix? Okay, dot to string. I think that should be fine for now. So these are the first information that we want to input, which is basically all of this payload data that we have. The second information is basically we need to specify the expires, and basically here we're going to specify for how long will this token lives, because what we said is these tokens are basically short-lived token, and short-lived token mean they have an expiry date before they can actually expire, and they will not be able to work anymore. So let's add this here. So we can say date time .now .add, let's make it an hour, just like some live for an hour. So add hours, I'm just make it to live for 1 hour. Every 1 hour we need to generate a new token. And lastly, what we need to do is we need to add the signing credential equal new signing credentials. And basically here I'm making a new symmetric key, and here what I need to pass is my key, which I have already created, or I already got from here. And basically once I do that, let's see, why is it not happy? Let's see, why is it not happy? So this will be key, and here I need to specify the algorithm, and I can put security algorithms dot hmac 256. So that's the security algorithm that I want to use to authenticate all of my requests. So what did I do here? So let's cover it again. So first of all, I created a token handler. I then got the key from my configuration, my security key. I converted it to a byte array. I created a token descriptor where I can fill all of my token information. So here I put the claims, I put the name, the email, the GTI, the IAT, all of those information. And then basically I gave my token an hour to live before it gets expired. And then I told my token descriptor, which is basically I'm gonna be able to fill this types of information here, my HMAC and all of this information. So I'm telling it that in order for you to get this info, we need to utilize the signing credentials, and these signing credentials are gonna utilize this symmetric key, which is this one here that we got. And you are gonna be utilizing the security algorithm HMAC 256 in order for you to get there. Apologies. So once we have done all of that, the next step is we need to actually utilize all of this information for us to generate a key. So we're going to put var token equal JWT token handler dot create token, and basically what we need to pass is we need to pass the token descriptor. So now we can see here how we have actually combined our token descriptor with the token handler that we have. And then we're going to put here var JWT token equal token handler dot write token, and we're gonna pass the token here. And once all of that is done, we just return the JWT token. So in essence here, once we have created the token, we can see that the type of the token that's being generated is a security token. And that type of security token is not actually, we can utilize. What we need to do is we need to convert it to a string where we can actually utilize it. So that's why we utilize the token handler here. And basically this token handler has a functionality which converts a security token into an actual text. And that's what we're doing here. So let's continue on updating this step here. So we're gonna just put var token equal generate security token, generate JWT token, and we're gonna pass the new user, and basically we're just gonna return an OK. And we're gonna return the auth result. We're gonna make it new auth result, and let's see what we're gonna pass inside this auth result. So we're gonna pass result equal true because it passed, and basically the token that we wanna pass, it's gonna be the token that we have. I think that should be it for the register token. So let's do a quick overview of what we have done here. So basically the first thing that we have done here is basically we have first created our action, and this action basically we have created our controller, and this controller is gonna be responsible to have all of the actions that we need to enable to register and log in. So once we have set up the controller, the next step that we did is basically we have loaded the user manager and the JWT to config into our controller so we can actually utilize them. And as we said, the user manager is basically provided for us out of the box with the identity manager, and the JWT config we have done it here inside the Program.cs. So once we have done all of that, the next step is we started building our register controller. So the register controller is basically utilizing HTTP post, and basically what we did here is we just identified the body that we are expecting, and then the first thing that we done is basically we made sure that this body is valid. If it's not valid, we gave an error, and then first we checked the second item. Basically we followed this hierarchy here. Let's check it out. So first we checked the value, then we checked we validated the request format, and then we checked if the email exists, and if it does exist, we basically sent the bad request. Else we started creating the new user, we added the new user, and once we added the new user, we checked if it has been added successfully. Once that has been done, basically we have generated a new JWT token. And the JWT token that was created, it has been created in this manner here. So we can see here that the JWT token utilizes something called the security token handler, which is going to be the main function responsible for creating that token. We have gotten the security key that we have created, and then basically what we did is we created something called a security descriptor, and here the security descriptor allowed us to fill the body of the token like this. And then once we have done all of that, we specified an expiry date for our token, which is 1 hour after it has been generated, and then we assigned a security credential for these tokens, so we are able to actually have the security implications here. And once we have done all of that, we basically utilize the token handler to create the token based on the token descriptor information. And then because we got here a security token, what we need to do is we need to convert it to a string, and that's what we utilize the token handler write token functionality, and basically we have a string here and we returned it. Let's make this a bit smaller. It doesn't really gonna make a lot of difference, but let's make it like this. Okay, let us just do a build without anything else. So let's see here, I'm just gonna do .NET build. Perfect, we can see that the build has completed successfully and we don't have any errors. So that's exactly what we needed. So now, since we have already created our token to register, let's try it out. So let's run the application, and let's go to our web browser. Let's see, where's our web browser, and let's come here to the Swagger file, and we can see here that we have an authentication, and basically we have a new register endpoint. So let's utilize that, try it out. So let's see, what do I want to use? So I can put my name as Mohamad. The email, I want to put mohamad@email.com. And the password, I'm just going to put it password1. And let's try this out. So if I click on execute, so basically I received an error. So let's see what's the error. It's telling me that it's unable to resolve the user manager while attempting to activate the authentication. That's fine. Let's see why the user manager has failed, and let's see what else do we get. Do we get any other errors? Okay, let's take a look at our rider. So what do we have any extra error information here? So basically what we got here is unhandled exception, ASP not identity user manager to activate. Okay, that's fine. Let us try to fix this problem right now. So this error in specific will tell me something that because it says it's unable to activate it, it means that there's some kind of dependency injection issue that we have not taken into consideration. So let me open up my Program.cs and let me see there. So what I need to have here is basically I need to add the identity manager, the default identity manager with the identity user here, and I have not done that. So let me add this after the identity manager, and that I think should be able to fix the issue. So we're gonna put first builder dot services dot add default identity, and that's the exact thing that we wanted. I'm just gonna say I want to use the identity user, which is the default one provided for us. I think that should be fine. And then basically I need to optimize the options for it. So options, it's gonna be options dot sign in dot required confirmed email account. I'm gonna say false because we don't really need it, because basically at the end of the day this is all a test. And then basically what we need to do is gonna put dot add identity, or it's gonna be add entity framework stores, and here we need to specify basically our DB context that we have. So I think it was called app DB context, and that should be it. So why did we have this? So in essence, basically we're telling here the dependency injection, or basically the DI container, that we need to add a default identity manager for the identity user. We're not going to do any fancy stuff with it. We're just going to be utilizing anything that comes out of the box. Then basically we have specifying some options here, and basically we're telling it that the account does not need to be confirmed in order for us to sign in. This is something that we're going to address in a future video, where we're going to actually implement the sign-in process and the email functional email verification. So once you log in, you will be able to verify your email. And then once that is done, basically we have the identity framework store, which is basically will allow us to connect the identity with the application DB context. Because if you remember here, we just utilized the identity DB context instead of the normal DB context. So let's give this another shot. So let's stop this and let's start again. Let's see, where is my web browser? And let's try to execute this again. So basically the same information that we have provided before. And I'm still getting a different error, okay, which is fine. At least we are making progress. Which says unable to resolve service of formula JWT config while attempting to activate the controller. That's fine. Now let's fix this as well. So let's go back and let's stop the application. And basically if we go to authentication controller and let's take a look here. So it's telling us that it's not unable to activate JWT config. So let's take a look here inside the Program.cs. So we have services, configure, we have JWT config, builder, get section, JWT config. Okay, let's see, why could this be an error? So let me comment this out, and let me comment this out. And let us use this private read-only iConfiguration underscore configuration, and let's add it here. So it's going to be iConfiguration configuration, and we need to comment this out, and let's try this. So it's going to be underscore configuration equal configuration, and if we go all the way to the end here, let us use that instead so we can utilize what was it? So let's take a look again here, something like this. So we can take this, let's see if this will work. So we can do it in this manner. Underscore configuration dot get section dot value. So this would need here to be a secret as well. So let's try this. Let's run this. Okay, it's running. Let's go to our web browser. Let's execute this. And we can see here that it has worked correctly. So in essence, what we got is we got a token. This is our JWT token that we have. And basically we got the result equal true. It means that the application has generated it successfully and we don't have any error. Perfect. This is the exact outcome that we were expecting, and this is the exact outcome that we got. So the next step is we're going to be basically creating the login functionality to this. So let's jump into it. Okay, so for the login function, let's continue. So what we're going to be doing is after the register action, we're going to be creating the login function. And basically, first of all, we need to give it a route, and we're going to say it's going to be login. And then we need to start specifying our action. So it's going to be public async, let's say task. We're going to return an iAction result. And then we're going to say it's a login. And we're going to say from body. And what we need to do is basically we need to create the body that we should be expecting. So that should be fine. Under the DTOs here, let's create a new class. And we're gonna call this class user login request DTO. And that's gonna be very simple. So we're just gonna be expecting a string of an email and another string with the password. String password. And we're just gonna make these required, so in case someone tried to send the request without actually providing it, the request will fail. So we're gonna say required, and we're gonna say required, and that should be it. So now let's just take this class name, let's close this one, and let's go back to the controller, and we're just gonna pass it here. So that way, we're just gonna call this one login request. So basically that's going to be the main form of our login function. So what shall we do right now? So since we already expecting a login request, what we need to do is we need to validate it. So we need to check if model state is valid. So this means that both username and a password has been provided. It's gonna be we're gonna be able to continue. Else we're gonna be returning bad request. And let's return a auth result. And basically for this auth result, what we can do is we can say that the errors equal new list. And then basically we can just specify the first one. We'll say invalid payload. And then from here, what we can do is we can say the result was false. As simple as that. But because it has started, in case the body of the request has been successful, now we can continue. And then the first thing we need to do is we need to check if this user exists. So check if the user exists. And this one here, basically, if we go to our web browser, we're just following up the original plan that we have done. So basically, we checked the input of the username. So that's the first thing that we did. Then we validated the request. That was the next step. Now what we're doing is we're actually checking if the email exists. So if the email exists, we're gonna continue. If not, we're gonna stop. So let's see it right now. So in order for us to do that, we're gonna be utilizing the user manager that we have injected. So we're gonna put var, gonna call it existing underscore user equal await underscore user manager dot find by email in sync, find by email async. And basically here we need to pass the the login request dot email. As simple as that. So once we have gotten back the user, we need to check if it's null or not. So if existing user equal null, so we need to return what? If you said bad request, that's correct. We need to return bad request, new auth result, and basically we need to specify within this auth result that the errors is going to be new list of errors, and basically we need to say that invalid payload again. We shouldn't give a lot of information of why it failed for security purposes, but that should be fine. And we need to give a token equal false. As simple as that. So that's one thing that we need to do. The other one right now, if in case let's go back to the web browser. So here we can see the email exists. We did an email lookup. We made sure it's there. So if it doesn't exist, we return a bad request. If it does exist right now, we're gonna continue and check the username and a password. So let's check this right now. So how do we do that? It's very simple. We're gonna do var is correct. So basically we're gonna pass the username and the password, and we're gonna see if they match the original hash that exists inside our database. So we're gonna put user manager dot check password async, and this functionality is available for us out of the box. We don't have to do anything, and we can see here it takes the identity user that we have. So basically it's going to be existing user, and it's going to check the password that it has been provided. So login request dot password, and here we can see that this method here is going to return as simple as true or false, and if it's a valid password we're going to continue, if not we're going to stop. So let's check this. So if first of all it's correct, so it means it's false. What we're going to be doing is we're going to return bad request, new auth results, and then basically we're going to return a new it's going to be errors, new list. We're going to say invalid credentials. We're not going to give any further detail, and we're just going to say the result equal false. And why is this not happy? Because here it needs to be awaited. We did not await it. Okay, perfect. So that's the case in case it's not correct. But in case it's correct, what we need to do is we need to generate a JWT token, which is basically we're going to be utilizing the same function that we have created earlier, and that's going to be the main point of reusability of that method that we have created. So in case it's correct, it's going to be very simple. We're just going to be basically trying to find that token. So we're going to put var JWT token equal generate JWT token, and we're just going to pass the existing user. As simple as that. And now you can see basically we just got the token, and we basically reused this method that we have created earlier, and all we need to do is just return okay, and basically we're gonna return an auth result, actually a new auth result, and basically within this new auth result we're gonna basically return the token. So token equal JWT token that we created. We don't have errors, and the result should be true. As simple as that. And now let's try it out. So we have this here. Now let's try it. It's building and it's running. Perfect. Okay, it's not happy. Oh, I think we have an issue here, and because we did not specify if this action is a post, and that's something I have missed. So here we need to make HTTP post because this is a post action. So now let's try this. It is happy now. So now let's go to our web browser. So now basically let's update this. So we did the validation. We did the validation of the combination between a username and a password. We validated the credentials, and we generated the token if it's successful, and if it's invalid, we just sent invalid credentials. Okay, we have already completed all of these. So now if we go to our Swagger, let's just take this because I will not remember the password. So let's refresh here. And now I should see two actions available, which is the register and the login. So first of all, let me just re-put the information here just so I can keep track of it. But let me take these two because I need to use them to log in. So here I'm gonna put try out, and I'm just gonna pass this one here, the email and the password that I have. And now if everything goes to plan, I should see a JWT token response. So let's check it out. So execute. And basically we can see that everything went to plan, and we were able to actually get a JWT response, and we got our token back exactly the way we wanted, which is great. This is the exact result that we wanted. Now that we have basically created the registration, we have created the login, we're just gonna right now attach the authorization to our other actions. So here right now, if I click on get, or for Teams, for example, I get on try it out and click on execute, I will be able to get here without me actually having to pass any of the authorization. So let me open Insomnia. And let's use Insomnia because it will allow me to attach the security header there. So I'm gonna basically, I think this is too small. Let's create a new collection. I'm just gonna call it auth requests. But let me see if I can make this a bit bigger. So let's see, insomnia, preferences, and maybe the font size. I'll just make it 34 for now. And basically the editor font size, I'll also make it 34. Oops, 34. So let's see if this will help. Is there a way where I can save it? Okay, I think that's better. Now we can see everything is a bit bigger. Yeah. So what I'm gonna be doing right now, I'm just gonna click here, new request. I'm just gonna say this is gonna be the login request. It's gonna be of type post, and the body is gonna be JSON, create. So here what I'm gonna be doing, I'm just gonna take this URL. Where is the URL for the login? This is it, so let's take it. I'm just gonna paste it here. I'm just gonna paste the body, and then I'm gonna send the response, and we can see I got the token. Great. And let's add a new one, and this is gonna be for the register. So just keep them both in our insomnia. It's also gonna be post. The body is gonna be JSON, create. Let's take that URL for register. Let's make this another one, so we'll call it, I don't know, user, and here we'll put user 1, and the password, just add 11 to it. Login. Okay, let's take this URL. Let's put it here. Let's take this body. Let's make this here. Let's change this to 2, for example. If we send it, now we get all of the registration correctly. So these are the two ones that I want. So what I'm gonna be doing right now is I'm just gonna try to take this one as well, which is get, where is it? This one, get the teams. So right now, I'm gonna just add a new request. I'm gonna call it get teams. We're gonna make it as get, and we're gonna create. We're just gonna pass the URL and send, and we can see here I get it. And you notice here in the header they are empty. I don't have any authentication header, I don't have any security premises, I don't have any of that. So what I'm gonna be doing right now is basically I'm gonna prevent access to this action unless they have provided the correct JWT token that has been generated. So let's see how we can do that. So let's go back to our rider, and then inside our stop this, don't want it running now. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go to the Teams controller, and I'm going to update it in order for me to take advantage of that. So on top here, before the route, I need to add one single line. So that line is going to be authorize. And basically authorize mean here that it needs, the user will need to have some kind of authorization, and that authorization is going to be our JWT token. And the way the application know that this is going to be a part of the JWT token, because inside the program.cs here, what we did is we have injected our security authentication to the middleware, and that's going to be the default. If you notice from here, the default authentication mechanism is going to be that. So that's going to be the first part that we need to do. Is basically add the authorize here, and then we need to add more configuration to it, and basically it's gonna be authentication scheme, because we already defined it there, but we need to specify for this specific controller what type of authentication scheme that we want. And all we need to do is we put JWT registered, JWT is not this one, this needs to be JWT bearer default. If I can type bearer default dot authentication scheme. And that's what the first thing that we need to do is basically specify that this actual controller is going to be authenticated through utilizing of a JWT bearer tokens. And basically all of that, we can see it already set up here inside of our program.cs, and we can see here that we have the JWT bearer defaults, and this is going to be the authentication scheme. And that's the only thing that we need to do. So right now, if I try to run my application again, and if I try to go to Insomnia, let's go to Insomnia, and I am gonna run the same, this one again, I should get a 403 unauthorized. So let's see. I got a 401, excuse me, a 401, a 401 unauthorized, which is exactly what I wanted, because I have not passed the right header to it, which is telling this request that is expecting a security header, which basically tell it which user is trying to access this controller. So what I need to do is basically I need to add a header, which is called authorization. And basically, because we said the authentication scheme here, if we take a look at the controller, if we take a look, we said the authentication scheme is bearer default. So that means that we need to put bearer, which is the type. And then I'm gonna take this nice token that has been generated for me. I'm gonna go here, I'm just gonna paste it after bearer. And all I need to do is that, so right now if I click on send, we can see that I was able to get the response back exactly the way I wanted. And basically right now, if I try to remove this and send it again, I'm gonna get 401. If I add this, send again, I will be able to get it. So again here, let's use another token. So this one I use for the login. And if I come here, and if I update this token here with that token, and if I send, I should still be able to receive it. Great. So that's in essence here what we have done is we have covered the full scope of our application. So the first scope is that we have added the login and the registration, and basically we have implemented token-based authentication inside our application. So let us do a quick summary about what we have covered today. So the quickest way that we're going to do it is we're going to go back to our web browser, and we're going to explain it through the diagrams, the swim lane diagrams that we have. So let's go back to JWT, to our draw.io. And basically here what we have done is basically today we have created two journeys. We have created the registration journey and we have created the login journey. The registration journey, we allowed the users to input their email, their password, as well as their name in order for us to create their accounts. And then basically we have utilized the identity provider, which is going to be the Microsoft identity, which is provided for us out of the box in order for us to get there for both the registration and the login. And basically what we did is we went through all of this journey. So for the registration journey is basically we took the credentials from the user, we validated them, we checked if they already exist or not, and based on that we continued or we stopped. So in case the email exists, we asked them to log in. If not, we basically validated that email and then we utilized them to save them in the database. So if they saved correctly, we'll continue. If not, we sent an error, and then based on that we generated token and we sent it back to the user. On the other hand, for the login process, what we did is basically we took the credentials, we validated them, we checked if the email exists. If it didn't exist, we said invalid credential. If it does exist, we continued with the journey, and basically we were able to, generate credentials based on that, and at the end of it we basically granted them access utilizing JWT token. And inside the code we have utilized those libraries, which is basically the Nuget packages that we have installed in the beginning to allow us to utilize this by injecting them and configuring them inside our Program.cs. So we can see here, for example, we have basically updated or basically told the application that we're going to be utilizing authentication. We have told the application that we're going to be utilizing JWT bearer token. We have identified the characteristics of our JWT bearer token here, of what should be valid or not, and then basically we have injected it into our dependency injection so we can actually utilize it. As well, we have utilized inside our controller, so we can see here that we have utilized the user manager, which is another built-in functionality from our identity framework to get here. I hope this video was helpful. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. It will really help the channel. Have a great day.